The pounding at my front door rattled the frame like somebody was trying to break it down. At 2:30 in the morning, nothing good ever comes calling. I was halfway between sleep and waking when I heard the first desperate thuds followed by a voice I hadn't heard in months. "Jordan, please. Open up." It was my sister. And when I pulled that door open, she collapsed onto the porch, crying, bruised, clutching her baby to her chest. Before I could even react, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Lock the door. She deserves this." I still pulled them inside. And in that moment, I knew nothing about my family would ever be the same. I caught Eliza by the arm before she hit the ground, her knees giving out under her. Her baby little Noah let out a sharp cry as she struggled to keep him safe in her trembling arms. The porch light exposed everything: her split lip, the swelling around her left eye, the raw red marks on her throat. "Jesus, Eliza," I muttered, dragging her across the threshold. "What the hell happened?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her breath came in ragged gasps, and her whole body shook like she'd been running for her life. I kicked the door shut and threw the deadbolt. Noah's tiny fists beat against her chest as he wailed. My hands shook too, not from fear, but from anger. I hadn't seen Eliza in over 6 months, not since the fight that split us apart. She went her way, I went mine, and Mom had made it crystal clear she wanted me to let Eliza deal with the consequences of her choices. And now Mom was telling me to lock her out, to let her bleed on my porch with her baby in her arms. I shoved the thought aside and guided Eliza onto the couch. She clutched Noah so tightly I had to pry one of her arms away just to check her ribs. She winced, sucking in air. "You're safe," I whispered, kneeling in front of her. "You're in my house now. Nobody's going to hurt you here." She shook her head slowly like she didn't believe me. Her hair clung to her damp cheeks and she looked smaller than I remembered, fragile, almost broken. I grabbed a blanket from the recliner and draped it over her shoulders. "Talk to me, Eliza. Who did this?" Her lips trembled but no sound came out. Noah's cries filled the silence until she finally whispered, Don't call Mom." The words slammed into me, as if I needed reminding. That text was still glowing on my phone across the room. "Lock the door. She deserves this." I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. I couldn't unravel in front of her, not when she needed me steady. Instead, I went to the kitchen, grabbed the first aid kit from under the sink, and came back. Years in the Army left me with certain habits: keep your boots near the door, your gear ready, and a stocked first aid kit always on hand. When I returned, Eliza was rocking Noah, whispering into his hair. He'd stopped crying but still hiccuped softly, his tiny fingers tangled in her torn blouse. I set the kit on the coffee table and crouched again. "Eliza, you're hurt bad. Let me clean you up. Then you're going to tell me what happened." Her good eye darted to the door and her voice broke. "They'll come for me." "Who?" I asked sharply. Her silence was louder than any scream. The baby fussed, and I pulled a bottle from the half-open diaper bag on the floor. The bag looked stuffed in a hurry, spilling diapers and a crumpled baby blanket. I handed it to her and she guided the bottle to Noah's mouth. His little face relaxed as he sucked greedily, and for a moment the room quieted to just his small gulps. "You're safe," I repeated, softer now. "But you've got to trust me. If I don't know who hurt you, I can't protect you." Her hollow eyes met mine. Fear, yes, but also guilt. "I can't." She shook her head. "Not yet." I exhaled slowly, forcing patience. Fine. If she wouldn't tell me, I'd find out myself. My phone buzzed again. I grabbed it, braced for Mom. Instead, an unknown number lit the screen. The message was blunt, terrifying. "If she's with you, send her back, or you'll regret it." My blood went cold. I looked at Eliza, pale and trembling, clutching Noah like he was the last good thing she had. And I realized this wasn't just about bruises or family fights anymore. This was war. The message glared at me from my phone screen like a threat carved in stone. "If she's with you, send her back, or you'll regret it. No name, no signature. Just the kind of warning meant to sink claws into your chest. I locked the phone, shoved it face down, and grabbed a glass of water. My hands were steady, but my jaw ached from clenching. Whoever sent that message knew about Eliza or suspected, and if they had my number, they had access to me. When I came back into the living room, Eliza was cradling Noah. His tiny hand rested against the bruise on her collarbone like he could shield her. The sight made my throat burn. I set the glass down. Drink. Her hand shook so badly I had to steady it for her. After a few sips, she exhaled, slumping against the couch cushions. The blanket had slipped, exposing a long scrape down her arm. Eliza, I need the truth, I said, crouching again. Who did this? Her eyes darted toward the door, then back. You already know. No, I pressed. Not unless you say it. Her lip quivered. Brent. The name hit like a punch. Brent Caro, her boyfriend. The man I never trusted, the one Mom always defended, saying, at least he provides. What did he do? I asked, forcing calm. Her voice shook. He snapped. He's been drinking more, getting meaner. I told him I was leaving, that I couldn't keep Noah in that house anymore. He laughed. Said I wouldn't last a week. Then he hit me. Over and over. Her face twisted. Mom was there. She didn't stop him. She said I provoked him. I sat back, rage burning through my chest. It was one thing to hear Brent had crossed a line. It was another to know Mom had stood by, cold and silent. Why come here? I asked. After everything between us, why not the police? Her hollow eyes locked on mine. Because you're the only one I trust. Even after the fights. You always protected me when we were kids. The words cut deep. I took a breath. All right. Then we do this my way. We document everything, pictures of the bruises, the cuts. Then we get you to the hospital. She shook her head violently. No hospital. If Brent finds out. He already knows I snapped. He or someone with him just texted me. He's not stopping until you're broken, or worse. We're not giving him that chance. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she hugged Noah tighter. I softened. Sav, I caught myself. Eliza, listen to me. I've seen men like him in uniform and out. They only get worse. You walked away, and that makes you dangerous to him. He'll use Noah to drag you back. We're not letting that happen. Her silence spoke volumes. I lifted my phone, showing her the text. Proof. We can trace it. Build a case. She shuddered. That's him. I know it. Good. That's a start. She buried her face in Noah's hair. Jordan. Mom's not going to back me. She already chose her side. That text echoed in my head. Lock the door. She deserves this. I wanted to smash the phone, march to Mom's house, and demand how she could betray her daughter. But none of that would keep Eliza safe. Instead, I placed a hand on her knee. Then we forget Mom. We build our own circle. You, me, and Noah. Anyone else doesn't matter anymore. Her lips pressed together, and for the first time I saw the faintest flicker of relief. Okay, she whispered. Okay, first you rest. I'll keep watch. But even as I said it, my mind raced. This wasn't about one night's safety. This was just the beginning. And what chilled me most wasn't Brent's fists. It was Mom. Because her cold words made me fear my family wasn't just divided. It was poisoned. By dawn, the bruises on Eliza's face had darkened to deep purple. The swelling around her eye made it almost impossible for her to look at me without turning her head. Noah was finally asleep in the spare room crib I kept from when friends visited years ago. I stood in the kitchen nursing black coffee, listening to the silence of my house broken only by the faint hum of the fridge. My phone buzzed. It was Priya Singh, my old friend turned attorney, the one I trusted when things spiraled out of control. Jordan, she said. Her voice was tight, as though she already knew something was wrong. Yeah, I answered, pinching the bridge of my nose. I need your help. Emergency protective order. My sister and her son. Say no more, she cut in. Send me photos. Injuries, the threatening texts, everything. I'll file for a judge to review first thing this morning. I glanced toward the living room where Eliza sat with a cold compress against her cheek. She looked hollow, like her spirit had been wrung out of her. I grabbed my phone, took careful photos of her face, her arms, the fingerprints still visible on her skin. Each click of the camera shutter felt like evidence building against Brent, but it also felt like betrayal, because I knew Mom would take it personally. When I returned, Eliza whispered, "Mom will hate you for this." "Then let her," I muttered. "I'd rather she hate me than bury you." Around mid-morning, Priya came by with a thick file of paperwork. She laid it on my kitchen table, flipping pages with practiced speed. "Temporary protective orders," she said. "If the judge signs Brent can't come within 100 feet of Eliza or Noah, we can request no contact orders for your mom too if she keeps interfering." Eliza flinched. "Against Mom." Priya didn't flinch. "If she's complicit, yes." That word complicit hung heavy in the air. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. A coworker had sent me a link to our church newsletter. There was Mom smiling in a group photo holding a giant check. Underneath, the Hale Family Blessings Fund treasurer, Lorraine Hale. I clicked through the archive. The fund was meant to support single mothers in crisis. I stared at Mom's polished grin, the pearl necklace she wore for every church gala. "Jordan," Priya said carefully, following my gaze. "That's the fund Eliza mentioned last year, right? The one Brent pressured her about." Eliza nodded, shame coloring her bruised face. "He made me sign checks sometimes, said it was just paperwork. But the numbers never felt right." Priya's eyes sharpened. "Bank fraud, then. If we can show Brent and Lorraine used that fund as a personal wallet." Her words trailed off as the front door swung open. Mom stepped inside without knocking, carrying a pastry box like she was making a friendly visit. She smiled, eyes soft, voice dripping honey. "Jordan, darling, you didn't call me back." My body tensed. "Because I got your text." Her smile didn't falter. She set the box on the counter, brushing her hands together like she owned the place. "You misunderstood me. Eliza has always been dramatic. She brings things on herself." Eliza's face drained of color. "Mom, he hit me in front of you." Mom's eyes flicked toward her with barely concealed irritation. "You know how Brent gets when you provoke him. You could have de-escalated." Something in me snapped. De-escalated. He left her black and blue, Mom. And you're covering for him. Mom's mask slipped for just a second, sharpness glinting through. She leaned closer, voice a hiss. "Bring my grandson home, Jordan, or I'll make sure Child Protective takes him. You think you're helping her, but you're making things worse." Eliza gasped, clutching Noah tighter. Priya stepped between us, her tone like ice. "Lorraine," that sounded like a threat. "I suggest you leave before I put it in writing." Mom glared, then smoothed her expression back into that pleasant mask. "I'll pray for you all," she said, turning on her heel. The door clicked shut behind her, but her words lingered like smoke in the room. Later, when I helped Eliza tuck Noah in, I noticed something odd. The hem of his baby blanket felt stiff, like something had been sewn inside. I ran my fingers along it until I felt the shape small, metallic. I tugged gently, and a tiny brass key slid free into my palm. "Eliza," I whispered. "What is this?" Her face went pale. I hid everything. The bank statements, the ledgers, even the texts Brent sent me. It's all in a storage locker downtown. That key opens it." "You should have told me sooner," I said, my voice tight but careful. "I was scared," she admitted. "If Brent found out, if Mom..." I cut her off gently. "You did the right thing. This changes everything." Just then my phone buzzed again. An unknown number, same as before. "You're endangering your career. Stop now." My hand clenched around the key. For the first time that night, I felt something sharper than fear. I felt purpose. "They want me to back down," I said, sliding the key into my pocket. "But I'm not. Tonight we open that locker." Eliza's eyes widened, but for the first time hope flickered behind them. And in that moment I knew the war we were in wasn't just about fists or bruises. It was about money power and the rot running straight through our own bloodline. The brass key burned in my pocket all morning, heavy as a weapon. Eliza stayed curled up with Noah, drifting in and out of restless sleep while I paced like a caged dog. The protective order Priya filed wouldn't be signed until later in the day. Until then, Brent and Mom technically had free rein. Every creak of the floorboards, every car slowing outside made me tense. By noon, Priya texted, "Meet me at St. Bridget's. We need to see the church ledgers." I hesitated, glancing at Eliza. She clutched Noah like he was an anchor in a storm. "I'll be back soon," I told her, and for once she didn't argue. She just whispered, "Be careful." St. Bridget's Church looked exactly as it had when we were kids. White clapboard siding bells that rang on the hour and posters outside about community dinners. I used to love this place. Now the sight of it made my stomach turn. Priya was waiting by the steps, folder under her arm. She adjusted her blazer and muttered, "Play it cool. We're family asking questions, nothing more." Inside, the receptionist smiled warmly. "Treasurer's office," she asked. "Pastor Dunn's there." We followed her down a narrow hallway that smelled of lemon polish and dust. Pastor Dunn stood behind a desk stacked with binders, his glasses perched low on his nose. He looked up with practiced calm. "Jordan, Priya, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "We'd like to see the ledgers for the Hale Family Blessings Fund," Priya said smoothly. "Family matter. Jordan and Eliza contributed, and they'd like reassurance about where the money's gone." Dunn's smile faltered. "I'm afraid those records are internal, confidential." My jaw tightened. Confidential. It's our family's name on that fund. And I just saw my sister's face smashed in by the man our mom is protecting. "Don't talk to me about confidentiality." Before Dunn could respond, the door opened. Mom stepped in like she'd been waiting for the cue. Pearls around her neck, hair, perfect eyes sharp as razors. "Jordan," she said sweetly, "you shouldn't be here." Priya folded her arms. "Lorraine, transparency would solve a lot of problems. If the fund is legitimate, then prove it." Mom's smile didn't reach her eyes. "The only problem is my daughter undermining her family in front of strangers. Eliza has always had episodes. You know this." My fists curled. "Episodes you stood by while Brent beat her. And you're funneling money into God knows what." For the first time, Dunn shifted uncomfortably. "Lorraine, perhaps?" "Stay out of this," she snapped at him, then turned back to me. "Bring Noah back to me, Jordan. Stop letting your bitterness dictate your choices." Her voice was honey, but her words were poison. I felt the familiar mix of rage and heartbreak twist in my gut. We left without the ledgers. Outside, I was ready to punch a hole in the church wall. Priya laid a calming hand on my shoulder. "We'll get them another way. Don't let her bait you." A voice called my name. I turned to see Mrs. Whitcomb, our elderly neighbor, hobbling up with her cane. "Jordan?" she said, lowering her voice. "I didn't want to call, but I thought you should have this." She handed me a printed photo. Grainy but clear enough. Mom and Brent on her porch 2 nights ago. Mom slipping him an envelope, Brent glancing around nervously. My chest tightened. Proof, not just whispers. Mrs. Whitcomb patted my arm. "You always were the strong one. Don't let her scare you." I swallowed hard. "Thank you." That evening, Priya and I drove to the storage unit. The brass key slid into the lock with a satisfying click. The metal door screeched upward, revealing a dusty 5x5 space stacked with bankers' boxes. We hauled them out, setting them under the yellow glow of a single bulb. Inside, bank statements, donation records, a thumb drive labeled blessings, actuals, and a prepaid burner phone. Priya scrolled through the phone's texts, her eyes widening. "Look at this," she said, handing it over. Messages between Brent and Mom lit the screen. "Move funds before audit. She doesn't suspect. Keep her quiet." The air felt thinner around me. Proof of conspiracy sitting in my hands. I was about to pack the evidence when headlights swept across the lot. My blood went cold. A truck idled at the end of the row, Brent's old Ford. He didn't get out. He just sat there, engine rumbling, lights blinding us. After a tense minute, he peeled away, tires screeching. I exhaled, pulse racing. He knows. Priya nodded grimly. And now he knows we know. Back home, Eliza was rocking Noah to sleep when I walked in. She looked up, eyes hopeful. Did you find it? I pulled the thumb drive from my pocket and set it on the table. We found everything. Her hand went to her mouth, trembling. But I said, glancing toward the dark window. Brent saw us. He's not going to wait long before making his next move. For the first time, Eliza didn't look terrified. She looked determined. Then we'd better be ready. I slipped the brass key back into my pocket, the weight of it now symbolic. We weren't just fighting for survival anymore. We were fighting for the truth. By morning, the sky was the color of an old bruised yellow-gray light leaking through the blinds. I barely slept. Every time a car rolled past, I pictured Brent's truck idling outside again, or Mom's silhouette on my porch, pearls gleaming like teeth. Eliza sat at the table with a mug of tea she wasn't drinking, Noah asleep on her shoulder. The thumb drive and burner phone lay between us like detonators. Priya arrived at 8 sharp hair in a no-nonsense knot blazer, crisp despite the rain. Judge Harding is on duty for emergency matters, she said, dropping a stack of forms. We're first on the docket. Jordan, bring the photos and the texts. Eliza, you'll need to speak, but I'll keep it brief. No surprises. Eliza swallowed. I can do brief. I slid the threats into a neat folder. Mom's lock the door. Brent sent her back the second warning about my career, each printed with timestamps. I'd learned in the army that paper outlives memory and lies. The courthouse smelled like old coffee and floor polish. In the emergency chamber, the fluorescent lights hummed with bureaucratic indifference. Judge Harding was a silver-bearded man with a tired face that didn't waste expressions. He scanned our petition, then lifted his gaze to Eliza. Ms. Hale, do you fear for your safety and the safety of your child? He asked. Yes, Your Honor, she said, voice thin but steady. He hit me in front of my son. My mother told me to go back. Priya handed up the ER photos, the stills of Eliza's face at my kitchen table, the text from Mom, the threats. She summarized in clean strokes: night assault, witness failure threats, evidence storage, a pattern of control. When she played the brief clip from the ER security feed, Brent's knuckles flashing against the glass, his jaw clenched, security pulling him back, the judge's eyebrows ticked up a fraction. Temporary protective order granted, he said at last, stamping the page. No contact, no proximity within 100 feet of Ms. Hale or the child. And given the mother's interference, he glanced at Mom's text again, jaw tightening. Ms. Lorraine Hale is likewise enjoined from contact with the child pending further review. The gavel's crack was soft, but seismic. Eliza's breath hitched like she'd been underwater and just found air. Priya touched her forearm, a small anchor in the storm. We stepped into the hallway where the HVAC blew cold along our ankles. My phone buzzed. HR urgent. Of course, the countermove. I left Priya and Eliza near the elevators and cut across downtown to the hospital. The HR office lived in a windowless corridor that always smelled faintly of toner and stress. Shannon from HR met me with a pinched smile and a printed complaint. Jordan, she began, voice careful. We received an allegation that you accessed a patient's records without authorization and harassed a visitor in the ER last night. I stared at the paper. Under complainant, the neat letters read, Lorraine Hale. I set my folder on the table and met Shannon's eyes. Pull my access logs, I said. You'll see I didn't open any charts. And ask security for last night's footage. 10 minutes later, we were in the security office watching split-screen video, me at triage with Nurse Abby, hands visible, no terminals. Brent pounding the glass doors, face twisted. Abby stepping between us. My palms lifted open. The footage was colorless, clinical, the kind truth prefers. Abby joined us, tired, ponytail, sharp eyes. Jordan didn't touch MetroCare at all, she told HR, tapping the keyboard. And she diffused a bad situation. We'd have called PD if he pushed harder. Shannon closed the file with a sigh. We'll hold the complaint in abeyance, she said, which in HR language meant we see this for what it is. Document everything. I've been doing nothing else, I said, and meant it. Outside, the rain had turned steady, a thin veil over the parking deck. As I crossed to my car, my voicemail pinged. Unknown number. I hit play, and Pastor Dunn's careful tenor filled my ear. Jordan, it's Pastor. I heard you're escalating matters. I wish you'd let the church handle this internally. We can reconcile books. We don't need subpoenas involved. A pause. Then a slip he'd regret. There's no reason to make a fuss about a storage unit, is there? I stopped walking. The line clicked dead. The hair on my neck rose. He knew about the unit. He wasn't guessing. Someone told him. I forwarded the voicemail to Priya and typed, he mentioned the storage unit. Leverage or warning? Her reply came fast. Both. I'm filing expedited subpoenas now. Back at the house, we turned the dining room into a war table. The banker's boxes were open, the thumb drive plugged into my old laptop. Files piled in labeled stacks like sandbags before a flood. Merchant category codes highlighted in neon lodging electronics charitable events that mapped perfectly to weekend getaways. Priya muttered dates, I answered with photos, Eliza filled in names. We built a timeline the way you build a bridge, carefully weight-bearing with redundancies. When we were satisfied it wouldn't collapse under scrutiny, Priya snapped her brief shut. Detective Serrano's opening a financial crimes inquiry. The subpoenas should land by morning. Until then, do not engage. I promised. I meant it. I also knew promises buckle under pressure. The pressure came at dusk in the hospital garage, concrete sweating from the rain. I'd driven back to drop off an incident report Abby needed signed. I was 3 steps from my car when Brent stepped from behind a pillar, shoulders broad under a soaked denim jacket, eyes glass bright. Jordan, he said almost friendly, we need to clear the air. My pulse spiked, but my hands were steady. I kept one on my bag and angled toward the open lane. We're done talking, Brent. He smiled small and mean. You think a piece of paper keeps you safe? Lorraine said this wouldn't touch me. There, it was, the slip. I thumbed the record button on my phone without breaking eye contact. Repeat that. He blinked, recalculating. The smile faltered. Lorraine, she knows people. People who fix audits. People who make complaints disappear. He leaned in, breath sour with anger and energy drinks. You get in the way of family, you get crushed. That's how this town works. I let his words hang, car alarms chirping somewhere below us, rain ticking against the concrete lip. Then I stepped back, voice level. There's a protective order. You're in violation. A muscle jumped in his jaw. His gaze flicked to my phone. He saw the red dot. A beat of animal calculation, and then he retreated, hands up, half laughing like this was all a misunderstanding. You're making a mistake. He tossed over his shoulder, disappearing into the stairwell. I stood there, heart hammering, and saved the clip to the cloud, then to a spare drive, then texted it to Priya with the caption, he tied himself to Lorraine. When I got home, Eliza watched me from the doorway, Noah drowsy against her chest. You okay? She asked. I forced a breath out. I got what we needed. I showed her the transcript. Mom's name bloomed like a bruise on the screen. Eliza's face crumpled, not from surprise, she was past that, but from the grief of confirmation. Priya called on speaker. Good work, she said. The judge extended the order to include hospital property. Detective Serrano's flagged the fund for urgent review, and I filed subpoenas for bank ledgers and church emails, including Dunn. I glanced at the window, the rain, a soft curtain. The house smelled like baby lotion and black coffee and printer ink. Our world was small and bright against a wide, wet dark. Tonight we lock the doors, I said more to myself than anyone. Tomorrow we open theirs. Eliza nodded, rocking Noah. His breath made a soft whistle, the only sound in the room. I sent the files to 3 separate backups and slid my phone onto the charger. Somewhere out there, Mom was dialing someone, composing a new mask, rehearsing a new story. Somewhere, Brent was swallowing the first metallic taste of losing. The war had a new front now, paper and pixels, judges and ledgers, the kind I knew how to fight. And for the first time since the knock at 2:30 a.m., I believed we might actually win. Detective Serrano spread the bank statements across his desk like a poker player laying out a winning hand. Numbers, dates, transfers, black and white proof that the Blessings Fund wasn't about blessings at all. Check kiting, self-dealing, straight-up theft, he said, tapping one sheet with his pen. Funds earmarked for new mothers rerouted into Lorraine's personal account. Brent withdrew cash from ATMs 2 blocks from casinos. Merchant codes for resorts, electronics, jewelry. It's not subtle. Eliza sat across from him, Noah's stroller parked nearby. She looked pale but composed, nodding as Serrano explained. Her bruises had yellowed but were still visible, a reminder of why we were here. Priya leaned against the wall, arms crossed. We can tie it directly. Serrano nodded. Multiple checks deposited by Lorraine. Surveillance shows Brent withdrawing cash. Pastor Dunn's email. He slid a printout across the table. Lorraine instructed me to delay inquiry into discrepancies. That's enough for probable cause. I sat beside Eliza, my knee bouncing under the table. So what's next? Next, Serrano said we take it to court. The hearing room buzzed with tension. Mom sat in the back row, pearls gleaming face, an iron mask of dignity. Brent slouched beside her in a wrinkled button-down, a smirk plastered on like armor. Priya spoke with measured force. Your Honor, we have evidence of financial exploitation, intimidation, and repeated violations of protective orders. We request extension of custody protections for Eliza Hale and her son, and referral for criminal investigation into the misuse of the Hale Family Blessings Fund. The judge raised an eyebrow as the garage recording played, Brent's voice snarling. Lorraine said this wouldn't touch me. Lorraine's face twitched just for a second, but I saw it. Everyone saw it. Priya cued the burner phone messages on the screen. Move funds before audit. Keep her quiet. Use Noah if needed. Eliza flinched at that last one. I squeezed her hand, grounding her. When the judge banged the gavel, his tone was clipped. Orders extended. Brent Caro is barred from any contact. Lorraine Hale may only visit the child under supervision pending further review. Financial crimes referral is hereby made. A murmur swept the room. Brent cursed under his breath. Mom hissed something I couldn't hear. But the tide had turned. That afternoon, Serrano called me and Priya into his office again. He'd traced a flagged email from the church's accountant dated almost a year ago, days after Noah was born. Irregular transfers noted. Funds may not align with donor intent. Request clarification. The reply from Mom. Do not pursue this. Family matter. Books will reconcile post-audit. Serrano leaned back, rubbing his temple. She knew. She moved money the day after Noah was born. This wasn't a slip. It was planned. The words hollowed me out. She'd looked at her first grandson and in the same breath siphoned money meant for babies like him. That night, Eliza and I came home to find a CPS worker waiting on the porch, clipboard in hand. Anonymous report, she explained. Claims of maternal instability. We're required to check. Eliza's face went white. Oh God. I stepped forward. We've been expecting this. I handed her the court order, the pediatrician's note confirming Noah's good health, and a copy of the protective order. Priya had drilled me on exactly what to say. The worker read carefully, then nodded. This looks malicious. We'll close it out. Eliza sagged against the railing, relief flooding her. Noah babbled from her hip, oblivious. I knew exactly who made that call. Mom's fingerprints weren't on the form, but her perfume was in the air. 2 nights later, the war came to our doorstep in a sharper form. I stepped outside for the mail and saw my tires, slashed rubber curled like black petals. The air smelled of gasoline and wet asphalt. I checked the door camera. At 2:14 a.m., a hooded figure approached, crouched blade flashing under the streetlight. The gait was unmistakable. Brent. I called Serrano. Within an hour, officers hauled him off in cuffs for criminal mischief and violating the protective order. He shouted over his shoulder as they shoved him into the cruiser. "You think this ends with me? She's still out there." He meant Mom. And he wasn't wrong. Back inside, I set the footage to upload triple backed up like everything else. Eliza was pacing Noah, fussing on her shoulder. "Every time I think it's over, it gets worse," she whispered. I touched her arm. Worse means desperate. Desperate means close to collapse. Priya called just then, voice sharp with triumph. "We've got it." Done, folded under subpoena. Emails, receipts, all pointing back to Lorraine. The DA's office is drafting charges. Eliza covered her mouth with her hand. Tears slipped free, but they weren't just from fear this time. They were relief. Maybe even justice. I leaned against the counter, staring at the rain streaking down the window. For months, maybe years, I'd feared Brent's fists, his threats. But the deeper fear was always Lorraine, the way she twisted loyalty, the way she chose money and image over blood. Now the truth was out, and there was no mask left for her to hide behind. The trap had sprung, and soon she'd have to face the consequences. The courthouse smelled of old wood polish and stale coffee. Rain drummed steadily on the skylight above, muffled but relentless, like the world was holding its breath. Eliza sat beside me, Noah asleep in his stroller, tiny fists curled against his chest. Her face was pale but calm, exhausted. Yes, but no longer brittle. Priya sat on the other side, her trial bag at her feet like a soldier's weapon. When the clerk called the case, Lorraine walked in. She wore her best navy suit and pearls, her hair pinned tight, lips pressed into that familiar line of superiority. For a moment, she looked exactly like the mother who used to braid my hair before school, humming old hymns. But when she glanced at us, her eyes were sharp glass. The DA laid it out with ruthless clarity. Emails instructing Dunn to bury financial discrepancies. ATM footage of Brent pocketing cash. Bank records tracing Noah's benefits into Lorraine's account. The CPS complaint tied to her phone number. Each piece was a nail, each document a strike of the hammer. Priya leaned over, whispering, "This is airtight. She can't wriggle out." Lorraine tried anyway. When the judge asked for her response, she lifted her chin, voice coated with that syrupy condescension. "This is all a family misunderstanding, Your Honor. I only acted to ensure stability. My children exaggerate. They've always been dramatic." I stood. My voice shook at first, but steadied. "No, Your Honor. I've been dramatic plenty of times in my life, but bruises aren't exaggerations. Fraudulent bank transfers aren't exaggerations. A baby crying at 2:30 in the morning while his mother bled on my porch, that wasn't drama. That was survival." The judge's gavel came down hard. Custody to Eliza Hale full and permanent. Protective orders remain. Financial fraud charges against Lorraine Hale will proceed. Brent Caro's violations will be referred for sentencing. The sound echoed like thunder. Final, irrevocable. Lorraine's face cracked for the first time. Not tears, just the realization that the control she'd clung to for decades had slipped clean away. Weeks later, I walked Eliza and Noah into their new townhouse. Fresh paint on the walls, a second-hand crib set up in the corner, wind chimes catching the late summer breeze. It wasn't much, but it was safe. Eliza set Noah down, and he wobbled on unsteady legs, laughing at the freedom of space. She sank onto the couch, tears bright in her eyes. "I didn't think we'd get here." "Not really. You did the hardest part," I told her. "You survived. Now you get to live." She smiled weakly. "And you? After all this, what's left for you?" I didn't answer right away. I stood at the window watching Noah toddle across the rug. What's left is making sure he grows up never wondering if family means safety or danger. That's the only legacy that matters. Eliza reached for my hand. Thank you, Jordan, for choosing us over her. The words cut, but in a clean way, because it was true. That night, back at my own place, I scrolled through my phone. The threats had stopped. No more burner numbers, no more slashed tires, just silence. For the first time in months, I slept without waking to phantom knocks at the door. But the story wasn't really over. Justice had its wheels slow grinding imperfect. There'd be hearings, trials, sentencing, maybe appeals. Yet the fear had broken, and in its place was something sturdier: hope. To you, listening family is supposed to mean protection, but sometimes it means the opposite. And when it does, choosing to break away isn't betrayal, it's survival. If you've ever felt trapped by the ones who should have loved you most, know this: you are not alone, and your voice matters more than their silence. If this story stayed with you, share it. Let someone else know they're not alone either. And if you want to hear more stories where truth is louder than secrets, subscribe and stay with me. Because the fight for safety, for justice, for peace, it doesn't end when the gavel falls. It ends when fear no longer owns us.